Shorts, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those people that say, oh, we know where British Columbia is in Canada, but where is Prince George? Well, if you know Vancouver, we are about 500 miles north of Vancouver, in exactly the center of British Columbia, an amazing province. And for our guests from Europe, it's about 800 kilometers. So today, a very, very special day. We have Dr. Sandra Kaufmann, and she has an amazing bio. You mind if I call you Sandra or Sandy?
Be my guest. Absolutely.
So, Sandy Kofman, Dr. Kaufmann began her academic career in the field of cellular biology, earning a master's degree from the University of Connecticut, tropical ecology and plant physiology. A lot of difficult words for me, actually. Turning to medicine, she received her medical degree at the University of Maryland and completed a residency and fellowship at the Johns Hopkins field of pediatric anesthesiology. For the past 5 years, she had been the chef pediatric
Anesthesiologist.
anesthesiologist at the John DiMaggio Children's Hospital, a nationally recognized center of excellence. Most recently, she was recognized as the best in medicine by the American Health Council. Amazing. Now, and then the next line that I saw in your bio that really drew my attention, her avid interest in the science of anti-aging began many years ago as a hobby. Sandy, you got an amazing background, and then with all that knowledge and all the things that you likely still are doing now, you started focusing on aging. Now, we have a couple of things in common. I am a lay person, I'm not medical, but I'm going to turn 84 this year, in November actually, and I have an extraordinary interest in aging as well from a lay perspective, and sharing that kind of with the world. Actually, now you are also an author, and your book, we'll talk about your book a bit more as we go. I'm just looking for the title of the book is Kaufmann's Protocol, Why We Age and How to Stop It. I like the title. Now, you have a lot of background, but I'm sure you share with me that writing books is not easy, and at least it wasn't for me. I'm an author, and the book that I wrote on that topic is coming out in the next 3 weeks. It's already at the printers, and so it's a book with this title.
Oh, nice. Very nice. Beautiful. Nice muscles.
That's me.
I would imagine so. You look fantastic.
I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America.
Wow, nice.
So, and the book is about all the things that is not only a hobby for you, but you changed direction and became more and more interested in the issues around aging and how to not only delay it, but stop it. And I usually say that my objective is to get to 120.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm
That's
doing
actually
all
quite funny. So that is my age as well. That is my goal.
So what I'm doing from a lay perspective is saying, if you don't mind me saying that, is saying that, okay, John, what was the motivator for you? Is that we all get a shock at some point in life, and in 2008, when I was 68, up to that point, my wife is a vegetarian and always speaks to me as to what is healthy and all those other things, and I was not the best listener. I was okay, but not as good as I could be and should be. And so then I got a case of diverticulitis, which was for the laypersons and pain. I would say if it is pain on the right side, it's probably your, but it's on the left side again. You get an operation for taking out your
Appendicitis.
appendicitis, and on the left side, likely diverticulitis. And then if you have something with that, I'm not giving medical opinions, you correct me if I'm wrong, but you go to the doctor and he said, okay, go to greens and change your diet a bit, and then it kind of likely, hopefully goes away. In my case, what happened is that it breached, and so I had then about 48 hours to get something done about it. Immense pain, but I have a high threshold for pain, which didn't help the process. And I got to, on a flight back to Prince George, actually, it took far too much time. After about 2 days, I got to my doc, and who was also a personal friend, and waited for him at 9 o'clock in the mornings, and I came in at 7, and I was nearly doubling over with pain, and he said, get to the hospital, got an operation, came about that close, I guess, and that gave me a message that I knew then that I had to become very serious about health, longevity, and diet, and all of those things around it. And so where before, every time at New Year's, I do the same as most people do. I'm going to do this, that, and that in the new year, and then I'm going to buy a membership to the gym, and then 2 weeks later I can find 100 reasons why I can't go to the gym. And so I did then, in earnest, get a trainer, started going to the gym, and then from there on in, that started improving my fitness in a significant way, because from there and then I started training for bodybuilding and physique, and became quite successful, qualified for the Arnolds actually over a period of years. But at the same time, I started listening more to my wife in terms of diet, and so now I go to the store, I do the grocery shopping, can you believe it, for my wife? And so when I go to the store, I stay on the outside. I don't go to the aisles all that much, because that's where all the foods that are super prepared with all kinds of things that we don't know what it is, and started to become more conscientious of diet. And so today, I think I'm in pretty good shape, and then very conscientious of diet. So that brings me to you, is saying that what got you focused in particular to age and age-related issues?
Excellent question. I think it was severalfold. Number one, my mother was always quite ill. She was one of the first victims of toxic shock syndrome when I was a teenager. Lost both of her legs and all of her fingers because she, her immune system was suppressed, and she just was not a healthy person. So, I grew up sort of in fear of bad health. And then when I was 45 years old, I'm a rock climber. I'm a very athletic human.
Right.
I was hanging off the side of a cliff, just sort of hanging out. And, 45 is not, it was a little bit old to be hanging off a cliff, but I was. And I realized that if I didn't slow my aging process down, my outdoor career and my health was going to, diminish.
Exactly.
And as I was hanging there, I realized I'm an idiot. I'm a cell biologist. I'm a physician. I deal with drugs all day. I know molecules. And I thought, I'm going to figure this out. So I made a promise to myself 10 years ago to figure out why we aged, and then to figure out what to do about it. And I did.
From a scientific approach.
All scientific. It is all cellular biology. It's got, in my world, it has nothing to do with diet and exercise.
No.
It is all to do with cellular biology.
Right. And what does that mean to the layperson? I know it's in your book, and I'm going to for sure get a copy of the book. There's no question about that. And so And the first seven of first half of the book in particular, you talk about the seven.
Seven tenets of aging.
Okay.
Yes. All right. So realizing that most people out there are not scientists,
Right.
they have to understand several things. The first thing is that your body is made out of cells,
Yeah.
right? We can talk about our soul or our enthusiasm or whatever you want, but when push comes to shove, you're made out of cells,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And cell product. And cells diminish or have problems for very specific reasons,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
It depends on how you count them, right? They talk about the hallmarks of aging. There are lots of different things that people talk about, but it's horribly disorganized, and it drove me nuts.
Yeah.
So,
Still is.
right, it's incredibly annoying. So what I did is and honestly, no one really paid attention to the hallmarks of aging. I did this started this a decade ago.
Right.
So I took all of the reasons that cells decline and put them in seven categories,
Yeah.
which I call the seven tenets. And not to bore anyone to pieces, but very high level stuff. Like tenet one is failure of your DNA, right? Very specific problems with your DNA occur over time. Very
Yeah.
specific. Category two or tenet two is mitochondria that creates the energy for your system. Your
Right.
mitochondria age for seven specific reasons, right? Tenet three is your pathways. This is your ability to sense the world in terms of nutrients, energy, that sort of thing, and then create cellular pathways to fix it. So these are your sirtuins, your AMP kinase, and your mTOR pathway, which actually should be very important to you because the mTOR pathway is what builds muscle over time, right?
Right.
Tenet four is what I call quality control. This is the idea that your cell is a factory and things break and you have to fix them, right?
Right.
So this is DNA repair mechanisms, this is protein repair mechanisms, and something called autophagy, which is the idea that if something in your cell breaks, you can recycle the parts and use them again to save energy.
Right.
There's a whole lot of autophagy science.
Right.
Tenet five is your immune system that becomes your inflammatory system over the course of time. Anyone over the age of 40 is walking around in a very inflamed state, and that causes cancer and DNA damage and a variety of other things. Tenet six is what I call individual cell needs. And this is the idea that a stem cell has to be protected, senescent cells need to be eradicated, and the idea that a brain cell has a different requirement than a liver cell or a red cell. So very specific cellular being addressed. And then the last tenet, tenet seven, is what I call waste management. And this is mostly glycation issues. So glucose and other reducing sugars wreak havoc in the body for a variety of different ways, and we need to sort of get rid of that. And then lastly in that category is something called the accumulation of lipofuscin, which is sort of cell waste that the cell doesn't know what to do with.
What was the last in that category you said? I didn't hear it.
So it's lipofuscin accumulation.
Okay.
So when a cell decides to recycle pieces and parts in the autophagy category, it's usually left with a glob of stuff that the cell doesn't know what to do with. So it usually shoves it in the back of the cell, and it just sits there. And over time, in long-lived cells, especially neurons, it just accumulates and it causes problems with memory and such as you get older.
Right.
But anyway, so those are all of the reasons that you age.
Right.
Right. So the next step then is to figure out what to do about it.
Exactly.
Right. So the next thing I did is I decided when you look at what people take for longevity, it was always hearsay, right? You take what grandmas, cousins, uncles told you to take. It makes no sense at all. There was no scientific understanding of any of it. So I created a rating system, right? So depending on whatever it is, let's say agent X, whatever it is, right? Does it do anything in the different seven tenets of aging? And if it does absolutely nothing, for example, and for your DNA in tenet one, it got a 0.
Yeah.
If it was good in cell culture or a test tube, it got a 1. If it was good for non-human mammals, it got a 2. And if there was evidence in humans that was good, it got a 3, right? because different things do many different things in your cell. So now I've rated 50 some different agents, both over the counter as well as pharmaceuticals. And it comes with a 7-digit barcode that tells you exactly what it does in each category and how well it does it,
Okay.
right? So based on these numbering systems in the tenets, you can create someone's longevity protocol by mathematical algorithm instead of guessing.
Wow.
That's what I do.
Right. So,
Right.
so if we go back then, and from the layperson that obviously, when I was preparing for the book, it's the approach from how I lived, and that's my life and what I did personally as it affected me, and then reading about it, watching YouTubes and all the other information, buying numerous of books, unfortunately not yours yet, but I will get one, is that, and on the basis of that, at least put together my Living Young, Dying Old book. And in my process, I've been exposed to numerous docs that are, in particular, looking at aging, but also on other avenues that everybody is pursuing. Atia is one of them, and a number of other people are pursuing the other directions. But what I hear is that we are cells, and then at a certain age, the cells start, or you're losing to, or they become dormant, and there are ways of reactivating them. I don't know if that is the case or not, but in certain products are being sold that you can put on your body, and then that stimulates reactivation of cells that
Not
is
exactly.
only, not exactly, yeah.
Not
So,
exactly.
yeah. So then where do we start? And
So
saying,
where do you?
okay, we start with the book and starting to
Well,
understand it, but from a
so you
layperson,
start with two things as a layperson,
right?
right? And it depends on how much you want to know,
Yeah,
right? So, the way to think about a longevity protocol, and this isn't sort of important for anyone, is I think about longevity protocols in terms of what I call the longevity pyramid.
right.
Okay. And if you picture a pyramid, the bottom is going to be stuff that you do most commonly and hopefully every day,
Yeah,
right? So every day you need to be worried about your diet, you need to be worried about exercise, you need
yeah,
to take the appropriate supplements, the
yeah,
appropriate pharmaceuticals,
yeah,
light therapies, and maybe peptides, right?
right.
That's every day.
Yeah,
Once a week, there are things that you should do. My favorite example in the once a week category is massages. I think everyone should get a body massage once a week, not just because it feels good, but because you're increasing blood flow to your skin and to your muscles. Very good for you.
I
And there are a
like
few
that
and there are a
actually.
few other things, right?
Yeah.
And then once a month, there are things that you need to do. You need to eradicate your senescent cells. You
The
need
what?
certain infusions. So your senescent cells are very people call them zombie cells.
What
I like
there
to think of
are?
them as old man grumpy cells, but
Okay.
we need to get rid of them. They're grumpy old cells. They
Right.
change morphology. They get fat. They exude negative cytokinins.
Okay.
There's a paracrine effect where one grumpy cell makes the cell next to it grumpy.
Right.
And these cells we've demonstrated that if you get rid of them, you just do better, right? So once a month, you have anti-senescent cell therapy, right? And I do exosomes every month and a variety of other things. But the idea is when you're creating a protocol for yourself, you have to think about it in many layers of time, right? So
Right.
that's number one. The second question then is, well, okay, let's talk about supplements. What do I need for me, right? And that is determined by how old you are, what your goals are, and how committed you are. So, for example, a 30-year-old is going to need something different than a 50-year-old or an 80-year-old or a 100-year-old, right? Because your body declines, but it's
Yeah.
very specific in how it declines,
Right.
right? True aging starts between 34, 35, 36. By the time you are 40, you're sirtuin deficient, you're NAD deficient, your ability to fix your DNA starts falling. By the time you are 50, even more problems start occurring, and so on and so forth. So, depending on how old you are, you choose a different protocol. Additionally, all diseases that we know of are associated with one of the tenets of aging. So,
Right.
for example, if you are pre-diabetic or diabetes runs in your family, you have a glucose problem. So
Right.
then we put people on agents that have more points or more viability in tenet 7,
Right.
right? So, but if someone has cancer or they have arthritis, it falls into different tenets. So you sort of start on agents that have more points in that tenet to try to, delay morbidity and mortality.
Yeah.
So it's
The-
very personalized.
right. You're referring back to the seven tenets that you were referring to in the book. Right. Okay.
My entire longevity protocol is based on the 7 tenets.
Right. I interrupted you, so just
No. I'm trying to remember where I was. No, so basically, the third option for people. So option one, consider everything. Option or thought two, rather, is know what your goals are, right? But then three is if you want to really understand what you're doing, try to read the book because a lot of people start taking these supplements and they don't know why they're taking them. So they're not committed to it because they don't understand. And a lot of things you
exactly.
don't feel, but are very important. For example, no one feels yourself aging from day to day,
No.
generally speaking. I mean, you
No.
see it from year to year, but not day to day. So
No.
by taking supplements, you're not going to see yourself not aging from day to day.
No.
But again, over the course of a year, then you will. So most people have a hard time just doing it at face value versus reading something and saying, this is why I'm doing it. That's why the
Yeah.
book's there.
And so what I see a lot. Okay, let's look at me. I'm going to be 84. So that I started probably in earnest worrying about health and fitness and longevity and quality of life after I got my alarm, nearly died. And I was 68 then. And then I changed everything. But I was not necessarily very, very bad. So I know smoking is not good. I haven't done that for 30 years. So that's good. I don't drink really any alcohol at all now, but it was a period where I drank normally, like some people do. And then I'm very conscientious about, thank you to my wife, about diet and I'm very much focused on plant-based diets, and then the other part that I'm trying to stay away from is I know a lot of people every day when they get up, they got a whole handful of pills of God only knows what they are, where there is too
Well, so,
many
so I have to
chemicals.
stop there. That's
Yeah,
me. I actually do that. I take 70 drugs a day.
yeah.
So that is me. I have my pile, but I will tell you that that's what longevity protocols are. Like
Now,
you could diet and exercise, and you'll do very, very well.
right.
But unless you fix the 7 tenets of cellular decline, you're not going to be 120. It's just
Yeah,
not going to get you.
yeah. So the key is for us to saying, what are those 70? Well, they're supplements. If I think drugs, then I think chemicals. So
Okay, well, let me have put a caveat. Let me change the way you're thinking.
okay,
Everything that you put in your body, be it a food, a drink, something that you breathe, everything that you put in your body is a molecule,
okay,
right? You remember
yeah,
biochemistry or some fifth grade chemistry?
yeah,
Everything is a molecule. There's water molecules, there's oxygen molecules, there's amino acids. They're all molecules,
right,
right? Some of them floating around in the air, some of them come from plants, some of them were made in a laboratory yesterday.
Yeah.
One of them is not intrinsically better or worse than another one. They're
Right.
just molecules. So our job is to figure out which molecules are beneficial and which molecules are not beneficial.
Exactly.
So so when I evaluate supplements or molecules, I look at what good do they do, what potential side effects they have, what dose would be reasonable so you can maximize effect and minimize side effects. What is synergistic? So what two or three together would be better, right? So this is all hardcore molecular science. But this is what true longevity is.
I like how you approach this because if you came to my house and then we walked in the kitchen, we have half the plate is full of pills. Most of them I don't know what they are because they were bought mainly impulsive and thinking I saw something, I read something, and maybe I need this or maybe I need that. They are not necessarily medicine prescribed by a medical doctor. It is just something that I picked up on the way because I concluded in my mind that they were probably good, but there's no system to it from my perspective. Not with me, more so now than it used to be in the past, but I become more aware of that. No, it has to, that's why it is so amazing that I have you on my podcast, because mentally in my mind, my wife already is there quite a ways in terms of the way you are approaching it, but I like the way you did it, and we'll do it in the book, as to using a very deliberate way of choosing certain supplements to address those underlying issues, which really is you physically. That is your body. And you try to supplement those areas that you know will or are in decline directly, rather than so you know exactly where I'm going with this, is saying
Mhm.
that I have to understand either through the approach, because then the question becomes, how will I find out? And they're saying, well, I can talk to a doctor that doesn't really specialize in anything and that just goes and sees me for 5 minutes and saying, oh, what is the problem? Okay, we'll give you this. Here's the request for the medicine, whatever that is, and then we'll kind of go from there. Or am I doing things that are preemptive,
Mhm.
in anticipation of that? As you already said, I'm probably, as I'm approaching 84, I'm lucky so far. I'm doing an annual bumper to bumper, I call it. I pay for that in addition to my medical here is universal medical in Canada. The medical system doesn't pay for that, and I do every 18 months I do a full body MRI. That likely will be beneficial, and
Mhm.
then I try to find which supplements will help me, and my wife already does that to a certain extent. She is very good at that, but already follows what you are doing. I sent her a copy of your bio. I said, you must read this because, I'm going to be talking with a doc that is just an absolute specialist in those particular areas. So the other thing that I should mention about our podcast, actually, our podcast will come out usually, normally, and I did that up to about a month ago, the following day we release the podcast. But I changed that to where we, in the last 3-4 weeks, we're also doing it live. So this podcast is live, and then I release it the following day, and I don't do any editing. This is what it is. And the reason that I do it, I'm kind of came to mind, and I so just mentioning because thinking about my wife that's probably watching us is that a lot of times, sometimes I podcast with somebody, and then or I'm a guest on somebody else's podcast, and then I say, when will you release it? They said, let me see, July the 22nd. Said, are you kidding me? You know, that's a long time away. Anyway, so just a side comment. So this information is very, very critical, especially what I kind of believe now, and that's one of the reasons that I wrote the book, worked on the book for probably a year and a half, close to 2 years, is that we are now where people becoming more aware of quality of life, health, being healthy and fit, but in particular quality of life that where people my age, I know a lot of people like that already have decided by the time they got 60, they say, well, I'm too old to go to the gym, or I'm too old, or I've been doing this always, and following back to what you were saying, and you know, there are opportunities to directly affect quality of life and longevity, and that is, and I'm convinced of that. And you further confirm that it includes your body is precious. You only have one of them. It is amazingly forgiving and wants to be healthy and fit, but you must become aware and you must help it to do that. That means don't do the obvious, smoking, drinking, all these other things, drugs and blah, 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 but go beyond that. Be aware of anything that you put inside your body in terms of trying to make it healthy, and then use exercise. Doesn't mean you have to be a bodybuilder like I do, but at least for those that don't do much of it, at least walk half an hour a day to start, and then increase it if it feels good, and you will then see the rewards in terms of being physically active to whatever level you want to be, and it may be rock climbing, what you were doing up to the age of being 45, or,
Well, so don't get me wrong. I'm 55 now and I still climb.
Amazing.
So,
And
well, it's not because I decided to stop aging. But it was sort of funny because I'm probably a better climber now than I was before.
you know what's in this is that, what is interesting, Sandy, is that I know I look pretty good, and I'm
You look damn
active.
good.
I'm a go-go guy. You know, even now, you know, I wake up at 5:30 in the morning. I write books. Done about five. The one on Living Young, Dying Old is the fourth book that I wrote, and I'm working on 2 other ones. I'm not bragging here. I just want to give you kind of a look at who am I. 10 companies that I have running. I'm very active in podcasting. I'm a speaker, you know, do keynotes and all of those kind of things. And people say to me, oh, the other thing that I forgot to tell you. All of a sudden, I wrote another book, and you know, people say to me, how do you do all this stuff? I say, it's because I'm ADHD.
Oh, that's funny. I was trying to make a different word out of it. I'm like, gotcha. Well, you know, years ago we would have been medicated for it. Now it's a good thing,
Yeah,
right?
I call it a superpower, and
Yeah.
so you know, but it took me until I was 62 that I found out I was, and you know, so but anyway, so I'm just mentioning that you know, the doing all that stuff and being active, part of that is ADHD. Usually get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always think I'm late, and I always make my bed and every day. And then the other thing that we didn't talk about, but to me what is very important, I believe, is people say to me, how can you do all this stuff? And then I usually have a very positive attitude, is that you know, I've always believed that attitude, passion, work ethic will result in success. But to have a positive, trying to have a positive mind is also critical in terms of who you are, other than physical and from a fitness perspective, is that I believe that being mentally positive and not getting, there have been periods in my life that were difficult and where I was struggling with issues. I was born during the Second World War, saw far too much that I should not have seen in northeastern Holland, and and then I was academically not a success story. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times, and then my dream was, from the time I was 5, we were liberated by the Canadian Army, April the 12th, 1945. And my dream was to go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And I was going to go when I was 17. My parents wouldn't let me. I was then drafted into the Air Force in Holland. And then I went to Canada when I was 23. And that is now 60 years ago. And I had another dream, and the other dream was to build a lumber mill. And then the other dream was I wanted to start with nothing, because I kind of felt I had failed, because all my friends in school, went to the college and then university, and I became a laborer at 13. I'm proud of that today, but I wasn't necessarily then. So I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. So then I wanted to go to Canada, and then I wanted to build a sawmill and lumber mill in British Columbia. And then, so when I came off the bus here in British Columbia, in Prince George, in July of 1965, I had a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and then I counted my money at least 3 times, and I had $25.47.
Wow.
I couldn't speak the language, I didn't know soul, and I didn't have a job. But I knew I would be successful, and I would build a lumber mill. So I started as a lumber pilot, and started from the bottom. But the point that I'm making is that my fitness and the quality of life has a lot to do with accepting, listening to my wife, and then realizing that, yeah, this is important. Even then came to the point to write the book I founded, Living Young, Dying Old. And at the same time, buying your book, Kaufman Protocol, is because I believe positively that your approach is the right one. That makes a lot of sense to me, and I'm sure will to my wife as well. But also what is important, to have that strong mindset that came from somewhere that has helped me to do a lot of these things.
Well, your story is incredible. I mean, I feel quite inspired. You are truly amazing. Um, I don't know if I could have done what you did. I've been an American. I've always been an American. I got to go to regular school, med school, graduate school, residency. So I think I kind of did it the easy way. So kudos to you, because that's just truly amazing.
Well, the way I look at it now, Sandy, is that that I'm very fortunate that I realized that health is so critically important when I nearly died. And then I've been blessed with, probably my DNA is a good one looking back, and then I didn't over abuse it, if that is a term that I can use, but at the right time became active. And I did a lot of work with my hands initially when I built my initial company. I always say I worked 24/7, as long for 30 years, and I worked as long as I could stay awake. That's what I did until I built the initial base of the company, and then from there it started expanding. But now a lot of times I feel, if it is in relation to ADHD and some of the other parts going back to the war years, when we saw too much, obviously PTSD has been always part of my life. And then got counseling well into my 50s for the inner child, the little boy that really never reconciled the war years, and very emotional actually. And, but then also now feel very strongly about sharing my backgrounds, and not in terms of hurrah, hurrah, how successful John is, but more to stay the course and never give up and all those kinds. So the first book that I read, I'm going to send you copies of these books, is Against All Odds. And
Nice.
it's about, not about how successful John is, but more about all the way to go through the ups and downs and sharing that with others. And I do a lot of presenting to young people in particular, but also colleges, university, or whatever it is. And I know you do the same, and you are and sharing with the rest of the world, and young people in particular, of that. I believe that people are so preoccupied about the way they look, the way they dress, and all those kind of things, is that I always believe that you are special. There's only one of you in the world, only one, and that everything is possible as long as you have the right approach to it. And then what obviously follows is that health and fitness, critically important to that. And then self-confidence is very important, because that's, and being a good communicator, that, and especially in relationships and being successful in the world in general.
No, I absolutely agree. Absolutely.
So where do we go from here in terms of that? There is, in my opinion, the medical system is different in the United States than it is in Canada. Here we have universality, and it's difficult to get special medication or attention. The other problem is that there is a real shortage of docs here, and so the medical system here, without being critical about it, but it's good in terms of emergencies that occur, but not very good in talking about longevity or quality of life issues. I
Well,
think
I think that's a universal problem. You can't blame Canada for that one.
no. But then, on the other hand, if I go to the United States, it's not necessarily universality, but it's that quality of life. If you want to pay for a particular requirement, then we can go to the United States, and we've done that in the past, and it's a bit more easily acceptable or available.
Yeah, that part's probably true. But I will tell you, I mean, I'm an American doctor. Most physicians, God, the vast majority, know nothing about longevity medicine. Nothing.
Right,
The West, all of the West, is reactive medicine. They wait till you get a disease and then they
right.
give you a drug to treat it. There are very, very, very few of us longevity physicians that will tell you what's coming and then how to avoid it.
Yeah,
That is a very new, futuristic, novel concept. And, if you meet people like us, stick to them if you find one that you like, because we're very rare. And a lot of Western folks seem to think that we're a little bit nuts. But the fact that it's grounded in science makes us not nuts, which is yet another reason why I wrote the book, to demonstrate that this isn't, use crystals and hold hands and sing kumbaya. This is hardcore science, and it works.
say, Sandy, have you got a copy of the book close to you there that you can just show
You know
to?
what? I
Or
wish I,
can
I
we
wish
do
I
it here, guys? Can we put it on? We will put it on here. We
Oh,
just want
good.
to show
No,
it
so
to
I'm
our.
actually, so I happen to be in New Jersey, which is not my home. I'm in a hotel
Yeah.
room and I didn't bring any books.
No.
So
No.
my
No.
apologies.
No. We can get it. We can
Oh,
retrieve it
good.
here. We'll get it on there. So I believe Did, but we were talking about you in particular. Is that's the direction we will go? In my opinion, there's no question about that. And and so it then becomes a question of awareness and understanding. And a lot of times, and you already mentioned it early in our conversation, a lot of times it's complex and complicated. And the question then becomes, or the challenge then becomes, how can we make it easier to understand, and then trusting it that because there are so many opportunities, because they entrepreneurs, and I'm not suggesting anything bad, see that as an opportunity where we can sell products that may be questionable in terms of benefits. And so that where do we get the information that we required for direction? But I believe, and I try to do that in a way with my book, in a simple way. Is not, I'm making it very clear, I'm not a doc, I have no medical credentials other than the life that I'm living, and what I'm doing and why and how, and then looking at information to make it as well understood as possible, simply in the things that I do. And but I believe there is no question in my mind that that we will gradually, not quick enough, go in the direction that you are in, and made a decision to take that because at 45 you started realizing you didn't want to go any further into the aging. I find it over and over again that people say to me, I look much better now than what I did 20, 25 years ago. I was
Well,
overweight, out of
well, you
shape.
look great. I
Yeah,
mean,
and
you look amazing, so I believe that.
I feel good, but I'm doing a lot of things already thanks to my wife that has, I don't know how many pills she gives me, at least 20 a week already. And I sometimes wonder about it, but that is already, she's already following part of what you do. And I'm
Good.
going to be in a big hurry to get a couple of your books. So that is certainly part of it. And then, then exercise and being aware of all the obvious things. The other part, I want to run that by you, is that I believe that sleep is important. I try to sleep 7, 8 hours a night. Does that make sense? And is that good habit or?
No, it's fantastic. And what's really interesting about sleep, people put it in a category with, diet and exercise. But in reality, sleep is biochemical. You go to sleep and you wake up because of very specific proteins in your body. I just did a whole lecture at a longevity conference over uh, sleep, essentially. And the reason that the physical manifestation of sleep basically represents the idea that the biochemical processes are intact, right?
Right.
But what's important is that, yes, you're sleeping, but more important than that, 40% of the proteins that your body makes them in a circadian pattern, right? Most, if not all of your cells oscillate with circadian patterns, right?
What
So
what
while
what
you
is
are
circadian pattern?
so like around the clock,
Okay.
right? So,
Yeah.
so up to 40% of all of your genes get activated at a very specific time of day, right? So this is why you are catabolic during the day and anabolic at night, right? You're breaking things down during the day, but your body turns on all of the proteins to rebuild things, fix your DNA, fix your muscles, fix all of those things at night, right? These are
Right.
all driven by the very same chemicals that make you go to sleep,
Right.
right? It's a little convoluted. So the
Yeah.
answer is you absolutely have to sleep, but you have to do it in a natural sense. So people that say, "Oh, I took a Valium or a drug to go to sleep," it doesn't count because it's not the same type of sleep,
Right.
right? So sleep is just a physical representation of the body's ability to oscillate on a circadian rhythm. And I know
Right.
that sounds wacky, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
But
So
yes,
still,
get your 8 hours.
yeah.
Yes.
So what will happen now? You're obviously more and more people, and it appears to me already from what you are telling me so far, you want to make presentations all over. You are in demand.
Yeah.
That to me signals that I don't see anybody disagreeing with what you are saying. I haven't looked for it, but I cannot imagine. And so then doesn't it not follow that more and more medical doctors or people in specialties like that are starting to look at where do things go from here, and what role do I, hypothetically speaking, as a medical doctor, it would be very exciting to being part of an evolution, really, in how we look
So
at.
it has, so it hasn't happened yet. I wish that what you were saying is true, but physicians coming out of medical school right now are not trained in any of this. They're just not. They're based on organ systems and old-fashioned medicine. I think it's going to be another 5 years before people are actually trained in this and they come out. So it's
Now,
growing out in the real world, but not in the medical profession yet. Not
is
not at
that
all.
is that because there is so much money in medication? I'm being a little bit looking at it like,
So the answer is yes. It's driven by insurance companies.
right,
Like, for example, I work for a very large medical system, and I said I would, because I'm an anesthesiologist, but I
right,
said I would be more than happy to open up a wellness center for you to prevent disease. And
right,
they have no interest in that because being well does not bring money into a healthcare system,
exactly,
right? Insurance companies only pay for procedures, so they
right.
don't want that. The only idea would be that the insurance company wants people to be healthy because they don't want to pay out. But that is not sort of filtered through the system yet. But anyways, a consequence of all of this, it's not taught in med schools. This is very cutting edge science. This is not run of the mill. You're going to find it in, med school 101. So, for those of us who know this stuff and we lecture globally about it, there's a handful of us.
Now, you know what I find interesting, Sandy, is that about 5 years ago, 4 years ago, I started doing some blogging, and and I liked that. That was good, and then started to do a form of podcasting before COVID, and more in the region here. We have a lot of very interesting people here, and so I started podcasting them, and then COVID came. And then saying, okay, but that didn't work anymore. The television studio could not have us use their studio. And so then we said, what are we going to do now? So I had this apartment here and saying, well, let's make a studio there, but get the right equipment. And so we started then podcasting again locally, and then saying, well, we want to be more active. Maybe I've set up another studio in Vancouver. Well, then we have to go back and forth there and here and there. No. And then saying, the more I looked at the major television networks, the more I looked at it and saying CNN and ABC and all the other ones, 1, 2, 3 different people all interacting. At one time that didn't work well. At least one of them couldn't, or the other one, this fell apart, that fell apart. And we said, let's do it virtual. And so we started then virtual, and then it became a question, where do we find the people? And so we started signing up with Podmatch. That links the people together. And so that has worked well for us. And we are now podcasting around the world. We had somebody from South Africa this morning, another one from Greece, Spain, and I could just go on and on, from all over the world. the amazing part about it is, what I like about it is that I do keynote presentations, and I can do them all over the place, but then it costs me a lot of time, usually a day, 2 days to get it, and I'm staying in a hotel room, and then maybe I present to 50 people, maybe a couple hundred, or whatever it is. But here, I'm podcasting with Dr. Sandra Kaufmann, that is an absolute amazing doc specializing in aging, and we're having this discussion. I write a book about it, on being young, dying old. You are approaching it from a scientific perspective, an absolutely fabulous way. You have the book. I don't know, we will show it as well. I'm going to show it here to our public. That's the book, the Kaufmann Protocol, Why We Age and How to Stop It, by Dr. Sandra Kaufmann. And there we are discussing the issues around quality of life and all those critical parts. And while we are doing that, we're doing it live, but also as podcasting, we release it to your guest as well that you have. And then I urge people to subscribe to both our podcasts, as well as to like it, share it, and make comments on it, because these are the type of podcasts that bring this valuable information to the world. And while we are doing this, Sandy, I know that tens of thousands of people are watching us. And that's what is so unique about podcasting. That's why I like it. And it's just at the beginning, because it will grow much, much further than this. And that's why I believe in it, and that's why I believe it is so important. And it has been a privilege for me to have you on my podcast.
It is my absolute pleasure to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
And I'm going to send you, I have another book here, I'm going to send you 3 books here that I have. I'm going to sign up for you. And this one is coming out in the next 2 weeks. I'm going to obviously send you a copy of this one as well. But you may find the other ones interesting as well. So I'm going to, Scott will get the address from you, and then we'll go from there.
Fantastic.
Dr. Sandra Kaufmann,
I appreciate your
it was a pleasure to have you on my podcast and sharing with us and the rest of the world. You absolutely are in a unique position with issues that all of us should be aware of it, become familiar with it, because that's the direction. You may be early, 5-10 years early, but that does not mean that people not already can take advantage of it. So again, it was my pleasure.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. It's lovely doing this with you. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.